Hello and welcome to She Leads Collective podcast. I'm Mary Gregory and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is a space for honest conversations about what it really means to lead as a woman today and how we can all show up with more courage, care and clarity. You'll hear from inspiring women, powerful allies and bold truth tellers who are changing the game, not by playing tougher, but by leading smarter, softer and stronger. Hello and welcome to Conversations Worth Revisiting, a She Leads Collective summer series where I'm returning to some of the conversations from the podcast archive and bringing together different voices around one thought-provoking question. And today's question feels particularly relevant to the world we're living in and working in right now. AI is changing the way we work at extraordinary speed. And understandably, a lot of the conversations focus on what AI will be able to do, what jobs might change, what tasks might disappear, what skills we'll need next. But listening back through the conversations from the She Leads Collective archive, I found myself wondering about a slightly different question. As AI becomes capable of doing more, what becomes more valuable about being us? Not what humans can do better than a machine, but what is it about being human that actually becomes more important as technology advances? In today's episode, I'm bringing together three very different perspectives from Celine Floyd, Nishma Patel Robb and Carmel Saulbrey. And I want to start with Celine, who is Chief Leadership and Skills Officer at the consultancy Capfinity and who I spoke with in season 1. Celine challenges the idea that there needs to be a competition between humans and technology. And I asked her about the fact that despite a lot of people feeling threatened by AI, did she think that the things that make us human, like feelings, behaviours, the way we relate to each other, are the things that are very hard for AI to replicate, do you think?
Absolutely. So I think and actually we're about to publish a paper on this very topic, which is those very human skills that are difficult to replicate and or are crucial for really maximizing the value of AI and maintaining our humanity,
Yes.
as a species. So and they are things that AI can't touch, and they're the things that you described. There's
Yes.
also particular skills that make people really well able to use AI.
Yes.
And so, and the human in that equation. I was at an event last night actually, and one of the panelists said it's not human versus AI, it's human plus AI equals. And I think that's got to be the way forward. So I think it is scary. I think it feels huge. It feels like we're at a really important inflection point in our, as I say, from a species perspective.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm a big believer in there is still a huge role for the human in this.
Yes.
And it requires us all to understand that everyone has potential. That's the mantra that I am really living by.
Yes.
And it feels really exciting to see other people signing up to that,
Yes. I really like Celine's framing that not human versus AI, but human plus AI. Because perhaps the question isn't whether technology will outperform us. Perhaps it's whether we become clearer about the value we bring alongside it, or it brings alongside us. And that thought came through even more strongly in my conversation with Nishma Patel Robb. Nishma spent many years at Google working closely with technology and AI, and she now talks about what she calls the other AI, authentic intelligence. I asked her what she meant by this in practice.
My last few years at Google, I spent a lot of time working on AI and artificial intelligence in terms of how it would be applied in our daily lives or how it might need to be regulated as well. And there is no doubt we can see it even more so and accelerating in so many ways that the world is becoming more automated and more artificial. We've got to be really careful about that. I've talked about it for a long time about advertising becoming really bland and, everything becomes very pattern and predictable in its way. And the challenge is there's twofold. One is jobs in the future, which we do not know, right? There's do not believe anyone who says that they know what's going to happen next, because they simply don't. The only thing you do know is it's going to change, and jobs will become replaced or will be augmented or will be enhanced by artificial intelligence. There is no doubt about it. But one of the things you can see is that if the way that we think about future careers and opportunities or jobs or purpose and what do we do, what's our contribution or worth, so much of it will be automated around what we do. So if CVs to date have been about I do this, I did that, whatever, I believe that actually you will start to go, how do I be different? How do I stand out against all the machines? Actually, what somebody really wants is my personality, character, and my attitude, more so than actually what I did. And good interviewers will always look for both anyway, but I actually think that becomes of greater value. And actually, as we chart our own lives now going forward in a more artificial and automated world, how do you stand out to be different? Because actually, who you are and the values and the person you are and the role that we all play on this planet becomes really important and needs more examination, analysis, and spotlighting. And that's why I believe in that sense of authenticity, sometimes a word that's kind of overused and hard to kind of really comprehend what it means. But I do believe that authenticity is actually kind of a reflection of your true values and your attitudes and belief of life. How you tap into that authentic intelligence, which is about the determination of how much of it do you share and show. Basically, how do we be more human? If the machines are here and we are in a more machine-led world, artificial intelligence is how do we be more human, which sounds like a really weird thing to say, but actually human-centered leadership, human-centered behaviors, right? So workplaces that now have leaders who are more human, who show vulnerability, who show empathy, but also, it's back to my lovely Eileen Norton, grit and grace, how do you do that? And so actually the way that we connect now will be through our humanity, always has been. That becomes more important in a world where I go, well, I can't connect to a machine and an AI bot in that same way, but I can connect to you. If I'm a leader, will be very soon, but I have to manage machines and humans. How am I going to do that? I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to be more human than I am machine. So I think it gives you an outsized advantage in the workplace and in your career. I think it's a greater solve for humanity and our society and our soul. And I think it's back on this thing of this reinvention mission that we have in our entire life, which is about being more of me.
Being more human gives us an outsized advantage. That's an impactful phrase. Because the more technology can take care of some of the doing, the more important qualities like judgment, empathy, curiosity, creativity, and connection may become. But there's another question. What happens when we don't simply talk about AI and humanity as abstract ideas? What happens when we deliberately use AI to help people become better at those very human skills? Well, that's where Carmel Saulbrey's story becomes so fascinating. Just to give you some context, Carmel bought and now runs children's care homes, an entirely new world for her at the time. And she quickly discovered just how important very human qualities like curiosity, connection, empathy, and listening are in not only working with the young people themselves, but also in supporting her team to provide the kind of care the young people in their homes really needed.
All the lessons I'm learning in care, behaviour is communication, connection before correction, those kind of really key topics are universal.
Absolutely. As you're saying that, I'm thinking one of the fundamentals of leadership is connect with people. It's very difficult to lead if you don't have any connection with them.
And be really curious. So when employees, their behaviour is not quite what you want, and you want to say, sit down, this is what's going on. You take a breath and you say, well, their behaviour is telling us something, and you ask questions and you be really curious and you connect with them. So it has made me a better person because I was, I will say dynamic, but probably sometimes not a very patient person and not a particularly empathetic person. I think I kind of had ideas and I wanted to push it all forward, but actually you need to slow down, you need to listen, and you need to bring people with you. And I'm loving learning about care, learning about trauma informed, but actually it all goes over onto what it is to be a parent, what it is to be a friend, what it is to be a human, what it is to be a leader and an employer.
And this is where the story takes an interesting turn, because Carmel initially assumed AI had no place in a world where human connection mattered so much. Then she saw a very different possibility.
I was in a seminar and the AI guy was talking about different things you could do. And I thought, well, this isn't us because we need human beings in this. And then listened to him, and then something triggered that we'd had a beautiful young mentor had taken a child out, really connected, and the child made a serious disclosure, like told that something very traumatic had happened in their childhood, and it was quite shocking. And this poor young woman, who was a youth mentor, had all her training. We do incredible in-house training. It's all therapeutic, all the different things they need to know. But actually, what was she to say in that moment? And there's quite a few situations in the home. And every time I went into the homes, the kids would try you out. They'd say things. And I'd think, I wasn't sure what to say. I needed to practice. So now what it is we have an AI child with a different scenario, might not want to give its phone back or not refuse to eat or maybe self-harming. And then the learner can practice what they will say, and the AI will talk back differently depending on how they de-escalate the situation, how they connect with the child, and then they get a summary on what they did well and how they can improve. So we are finding it's really improving confidence, because it's all very well to sit in a classroom, but there's so many scenarios, there's so many different things that could happen in the home. So people are feeling a lot more confident on how to deal with the situations, on what to say. And because they're saying it out loud, it's very similar to what they would be doing in an actual situation.
Sounds like an incredibly complex tool to develop because, every child is different. Every scenario is going to be very nuanced. How have you actually developed it as something that's of real value to people?
Well, we've got about 70 scenarios and we're working on them. So something happened in one of our homes recently, so we could create a new one that was specific. The learner does get a précis of what's going on, and many of the scenarios are not wanting to go to bed. Last night they let me stay up later. Why are you making me go to bed now? So there's a lot of kind of scenarios that happen all the time in all the homes, and it's not perfect because actually in real life there's body language and things, but this is just one way of embedding the learning. So
And are you noticing a difference for those that have been piloting the app? Are you noticing a difference in their confidence?
yeah, because if you say the wrong thing, you can absolutely escalate a situation quite quickly. So it's teaching the team to slow down, take a breath, asking the questions, connecting, rather than trying to fix. Like if a child said, "You hate me, you're only here because you're paid to," the immediate thing would say, "No, no, 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 I'm here." And actually, we're not listening, we're not connecting, we're not being empathetic. And when you tell a child no, you are minimizing their experience. So it's in the small detail, and what we've had, a lot of people are just saying they feel more confident, and especially when we can trial out something that's happened in one of the homes, they might be coming into a fairly volatile situation, and then it just builds confidence that way.
I love the paradox in Carmel's story. She started from, this isn't us, we need human beings, and ended up using artificial intelligence to help people practice being more human. Not replacing empathy, but developing it. Not replacing judgment, but giving people a safe place to practice it. Perhaps that's one of the most useful ways we can think about AI, not as a substitute for humanity, but as a tool that frees us up or even helps us to become better at it. Listening back across these three conversations, I'm struck by how closely their ideas connect. Celine reminds us that the future doesn't have to be human versus AI, it can be human plus AI. Nishma takes that further and argues that as more of what we do becomes automated, who we are, our character, our values, empathy, and ability to connect may actually become more valuable. And Carmel shows us what that can look like in practice, using AI not to remove the human element, but to strengthen it. Perhaps that's the opportunity in front of us because technology will continue to develop. There's always going to be another tool, another platform, another capability. But our challenge as leaders isn't simply to keep up with what technology can do. It's to keep developing what we can do, to become more curious, more discerning, more empathetic, more connected, and more human. Perhaps in a world increasingly driven by technology, our humanity really may become our greatest competitive advantage. My thanks go out to Celine Floyd, Nishma Patel Robb and Carmel Saulbrey for sharing their thinking so generously. If something you've heard today has particularly resonated, I'd encourage you to listen to the full conversation. You'll find links to all 3 episodes in the show notes. And that brings us to the end of this summer edition of Conversations Worth Revisiting. Thank you for joining me for these 3 conversations, and I hope you've got lots of value out of them. And I'll be back very soon with season 4. In fact, I'll be back on the 2nd of September, which is just next week, and we have a fantastic lineup of guests to join us. Until then, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening to the She Leads Collective podcast. If this episode resonated with you, follow the show or share it with a friend and leave a quick review below. Or leave us a comment. Change happens through conversation, so let's keep this one going. Listen out for the next episode and join me as we keep lifting the lid on the stories that matter. Take care and keep leading with heart.